Have you ever, like, pulled a loose thread on a cheap sweater expecting just a tiny snag, and then you watch the whole sleeve completely fall off?
Oh, yeah. The worst.
Right. Well, welcome to this deep dive. Because today, we're looking at a literal loose thread in the halls of Congress that unraveled a massive, highly coordinated criminal conspiracy.
And the craziest part is where it started.
Exactly. It all started because two neighbors in Washington, D.C. couldn't agree on a parking space. I mean, we're talking about a petty domestic dispute that ends with a sitting U.S. senator trying to smuggle $500,000 in diamonds
Inside a pig.
inside the stomach of a genetically modified, extremely low-fat pig.
It is a phenomenal case study. We have this stack of meticulously documented source material, articles, personal accounts, investigative notes.
And it really is the ultimate chain reaction.
Totally. We often operate under this assumption that massive political scandals, like the kind that bring down powerful lawmakers, are unearthed through, years of dogged institutional investigation.
Yeah. Right, like rooms full of journalists staring at corkboards with red string.
Exactly. Or intelligence agencies running elaborate multi-year stings. But the reality presented in our sources today is, well, it's the absolute definition of chaotic, muddy waters.
It really is.
This entire sequence of events literally hinges on the personal and professional collision of two individuals who, honestly, should never have interacted beyond like a passive-aggressive nod in a shared hallway.
Okay, so let's get into who these two people are. Because to really grasp how this collision managed to expose a U.S. senator, we can't just jump straight into the espionage and the diamonds.
No, you have to understand the baseline environment first.
Right. We have to look at the psychological pressure cooker of forced urban cohabitation. Because before the wiretaps and the shootouts, there was just this gentrifying row house on 27th Street in D.C.
And it's one of those neighborhoods pulling itself out of a midlife crisis,
Yeah, dominated by double-income families who desperately rely on gourmet takeout because literally nobody has the energy to cook.
Right. And the building itself is a converted structure. So the ground floor is this traditional, relatively normal apartment, and the second floor is essentially just two large, sprawling rooms.
Which creates this intense architectural intimacy.
Exactly. And forced into this space are two human beings who operate on completely incompatible frequencies.
So incompatible. Let's look at the occupant of the ground floor first, Louisa Brannigan.
Right. So Louisa is a 30-year-old press secretary for Senator Nolan Bishop. And the sources paint this very clear psychological profile of her.
Oh, she is heavily compartmentalized.
Extremely. She's rigidly scheduled, highly organized, and fundamentally defined by being this strict rule follower.
But underneath that polished exterior, she's struggling, right?
Yeah, there's this profound void where her personal life should be. I mean, the detail that perfectly encapsulates her mindset is how she celebrated her recent 30th birthday.
Oh my gosh, yes, the birthday dinner.
She celebrated this massive life milestone with a sedate lunch at the historic Willard Hotel.
Which is so formal and stuffy.
Right. And then followed it up with supper at the Hard Rock Cafe.
I can't even.
That combination.
Yeah.
The suffocating traditionalism of the Willard paired with, like, the manufactured corporate edge of the Hard Rock Cafe, that was her version of letting loose.
It's almost tragic when you look at it psychologically. She's desperate for an identity outside her job on Capitol Hill, but she literally doesn't know how to step outside the lines.
And she's actually pretty self-aware about it. Louisa admits to herself in the sources that she is, quote, aggressive, but not assertive.
She calls herself a wimp.
She does. She grew up in Chevy Chase, Maryland, which is very affluent, highly structured, very risk-averse.
It's the kind of upbringing where you get your dopamine hits entirely from playing by the rules and pleasing your parents.
Exactly. She is the archetypal good girl.
Ugh.
But the stress of her job is immense. Senator Bishop is actively trying to raise his national profile, so her office is just a relentless pressure cooker.
And she's wound so tight. I mean, the sources mentioned she genuinely takes profound pleasure in the morning ritual of grinding her coffee beans, just because it provides this safe, socially acceptable way to violently smash something into tiny pieces.
That detail about the coffee grinder is brilliant.
Yeah.
It highlights her desperate need for displaced aggression. I mean, she can't yell at her boss, she can't control the news cycle, but she can obliterate those beans.
Right. And then right above her, absorbing all that unexpressed energy through the floorboards, is Pete Streeter.
Oh, Pete. His psychological profile is the exact inverse of Louisa's.
He is a human tornado.
Literally. He's in his late 30s, he holds an Academy Award for screenwriting, And before Hollywood, he was a hardened South American war correspondent for Reuters.
So his lifestyle is just entirely chaotic.
Completely. He's nocturnal. His apartment has massive, bulky furniture and a giant flat-screen TV. And while Louisa is carefully grinding her artisanal beans, Pete is drinking coffee that the sources describe as having the consistency of motor oil.
Oh, gross.
And his approach to pet care. He feeds his orange cat, Spike, by just throwing entire raw steaks directly onto the floor.
That is unhinged.
It is. The contrast is visually and conceptually jarring.
You have Louisa, who views like a quiet 5 minutes with the morning newspaper as the foundation of civilized humanity,
Right.
living below a man who writes explosive action movies, eats leftover hot dogs for breakfast, and kickstarts his writing process by eating peanut butter and marshmallow fluff sandwiches.
And you have to look at Pete's origins to understand this. He didn't grow up in Chevy Chase. He grew up in Hellertown, Pennsylvania, this gritty, working-class steel mill town.
He was a wild kid, right?
Notoriously wild. Stole cars for joyrides, joined the military, got busted down in rank for insubordination, and eventually channeled all that reckless energy into war reporting in Colombia.
Where he literally took a bullet in the leg.
Exactly. Which brings up this fascinating contradiction. Here's a guy who's wildly successful. He has an Oscar, he owns a luxurious house in Santa Barbara, and a high-end condo in Manhattan.
So if this guy is a wildly successful Hollywood writer, why is he living in a noisy, converted D.C. row house?
Right, where he has to deal with the downstairs neighbor thumping a broom on his floor.
It makes zero sense financially. If I have a house in Santa Barbara, I am not sharing a wall with someone grinding coffee at 6 a.m.
It makes no sense financially, but psychologically it makes perfect sense. Pete seeks out 27th Street precisely because of its lack of pretension.
Oh, interesting.
His other residences offer strict privacy, gated security, doormen. But those environments can be incredibly isolating, especially for a writer who relies on observing human behavior.
So he needs the messiness of real life.
Yes. 27th Street offers rickety garages, slightly messy lawns, neighbors who are accessible. Pete explicitly states he finds normality there. It's a grounding mechanism.
Probably a trauma response from his rough upbringing in the hyper-violent combat zones. He needs friction to feel alive.
Exactly. But the deep irony is that this deliberate choice to seek out a normal life is the exact variable that places him directly in the crosshairs of a massive conspiracy.
By trying to hide in plain sight, his life is about to become violently abnormal, which sets the stage for the suburban warfare between him and Louisa.
And it begins with these incredibly petty, localized grievances. The first trigger is Pete's telephone.
Oh, the robotic call.
Yeah, it rings constantly in the middle of the night. But because of how the building is wired, Louisa's cordless phone downstairs actually picks up the signal from Pete's line.
So she is being jolted awake at 4:30 in the morning to this synthesized voice just repeating a single word, stop.
Over and over. Louisa becomes so sleep-deprived and furious that she reaches a breaking point and literally throws her own telephone into the toilet.
Just to force some silence.
Which is a massive red flag regarding her mental state. Throwing the phone in the toilet isn't rational. It's a desperate act of self-sabotage to regain control.
And Pete is totally oblivious. He's also padding downstairs in the morning and stealing her newspaper.
Even though he doesn't have a subscription, he just wants to read a specific movie review. He does this with zero awareness that he is violating her sacred morning ritual.
But the crowning insult, the real proxy war, is the parking space.
Ah, yes. Space 1038A and 1038B.
Right. Louisa's assigned space is A. But Pete constantly parks his black Porsche in her spot out of pure carelessness.
Which forces Louisa, when she gets home exhausted, to park her black Ford in his spot, B.
It's the perfect visual representation of Pete usurping her space. And how does she handle it? Because of her aggressive but not assertive nature, she doesn't actually talk to him.
No, she leaves firmly worded notes on his windshield. She makes complaining phone calls to the rental office. She tries to outsource the confrontation because she's terrified of face-to-face friction.
But Pete ignores the notes, the rental office does nothing, and the pressure just builds until she finally snaps. She grabs a broom handle and starts violently thumping on her kitchen ceiling.
Which shatters the passive-aggressive barrier. Pete, who's just trying to read the funnies in the paper he stole from her, gets annoyed. So he walks downstairs, pushes open her unlocked door, and confronts her in her kitchen.
And he is a large, raw-boned, deeply physically imposing man.
And crucially, he happens to be half naked during this confrontation.
I mean, for Louisa, who meticulously controls her visual environment, a giant, half-naked man suddenly in her kitchen is the ultimate system shock.
It establishes the total collapse of her controlled environment. But now we have to pivot to how this hyper-localized, almost sitcom-level feud is violently interrupted.
Yes, because we're about to cross a massive threshold here.
Those robotic stop calls at 4:30 a.m. They were not wrong numbers. Pete, driven by his old journalistic instincts, had been running anonymous advertisements in the local paper.
Offering a cash reward for information about this bizarre, tiny filler news item he saw.
Exactly. He was poking a stick into a dark cave to see what would growl back. And the forces inside that cave finally decide to neutralize the threat.
Which is where this deep dive transitions from annoying neighbors to a genuine thriller. The thugs mistakenly target Louisa instead of Pete.
It's the ultimate collateral damage. Let's look at the inciting incident. It's evening. Pete is lurking in the shadows outside their building because he senses someone is coming for him.
His combat zone instincts are kicking in.
Right. When Louisa comes home, totally oblivious, Pete physically grabs her and pulls her into the shadows. And suddenly, a dark, unmarked sedan rolls up.
Two men get out. One levels a firearm directly at Pete's position, providing cover.
While the second man retrieves a massive sledgehammer and just absolutely obliterates a car parked at the curb. I mean, total destruction, smashing the windshield, caving in the hood.
And this is where the petty parking dispute becomes the fulcrum of the entire story.
Because the parking spot swapping.
Yes. Pete's black Porsche was parked in Louisa's spot, 1038A. Louisa had been forced to park her black Ford in Pete's spot, 1038B.
And the thugs, operating on basic surveillance, assume Pete is parked in his designated spot. So they pulverize Louisa's little Ford, entirely convinced they're destroying Pete's expensive Porsche.
The psychological impact of witnessing this, put yourself in Louisa's head. You're pinned against a brick wall by a half-naked man you despise, listening to a sledgehammer tear through metal, and hearing the crack of warning shots from a handgun.
Her illusion of a safe, predictable world is instantly reduced to rubble.
And Pete's reaction is just incredibly jarring. He realizes her car was destroyed instead of his, and his only verbal response is to casually say, "Bummer."
Bummer. That single word is a masterclass in revealing character. It encapsulates his profound desensitization to violence. I mean, when you've watched drug cartels fire automatic weapons in the jungle, a sledgehammer to a Ford bumper barely registers.
His baseline for panic is so high. But for Louisa, it's a shattering trauma.
And this shared trauma acts as an immediate accelerant. It instantly realigns their interpersonal dynamic. You can't care about a stolen newspaper when somebody's shooting at you.
No, the annoyance is instantly replaced by a trauma-bonded necessity to figure out what is happening. And I love how right after the thugs speed away, Pete casually offers to let Louisa borrow his prized Porsche so she can get to a political cocktail party.
He even warns her to keep the speed down because the steering column has a shimmy at 120 miles per hour.
While Louisa is in clinical shock, babbling nonsensically about how the Porsche is the wrong color black anyway, it's terrifying how easily innocent bystanders become collateral damage.
And the violation doesn't stop at the curb. It breaches the actual walls of their sanctuary later that exact same night.
The intruder.
Yes, deep in the night, an intruder breaks into Pete's upstairs apartment. Louisa, flooded with residual cortisol, is awake. She hears the commotion, but assumes Pete is just loudly working out.
Because her brain is still trying to apply normal neighborhood logic.
Exactly. So she marches upstairs in her blue velour robe and furry slippers to scold him. Instead, she walks directly into a brutal brawl. Pete, entirely naked, comes tumbling out of his bedroom, locked in combat with a masked intruder.
And the momentum sends them crashing right into Louisa. All three of them, a terrified aide, an armed thug, and a naked Hollywood writer, roll violently down the entire flight of wooden stairs, smashing into a heavy brass umbrella stand.
You literally cannot script a more chaotic dismantling of a comfort zone.
The intruder escapes, and Louisa is left lying in the foyer, tangled up with a bleeding, totally naked Pete. It's the point of no return. You can't go back to sticky notes after that.
Precisely. The psychological barrier separating neighbors from survivors is permanently demolished. And underneath the panic, Louisa realizes she is actually deeply drawn to Pete.
Oh, she's totally smitten in the chaos.
But there's no time to process it because the violence bleeds directly into her professional life on Capitol Hill the very next morning, proving this isn't random street crime.
Right, the Capitol Hill machine. Up until now, Louisa fundamentally believes in the system. She's a pragmatic idealist. She believes in her boss, Senator Nolan Bishop.
But the illusion cracks the next day outside the Dirksen or Hart Senate office building. She witnesses Bishop in a highly tense physical confrontation with Senator Stu Maislin from Pennsylvania.
We really need to analyze Senator Stu Maislin. He is a dangerous archetype of political power.
Oh, absolutely. The sources describe him vividly. He's physically intimidating, bulldog-like face, wears $900 bespoke suits, but he consistently has gravy stains on his silk ties.
The gravy stain is so telling.
It signifies a man who possesses so much raw power, he doesn't care about aesthetics. Nobody has the courage to call him sloppy. He made millions in industrial ball bearings before politics.
He has immense clout, ruthless strong-arm tactics, and very open aspirations for the Oval Office.
Plus persistent rumors about deep ties to organized crime in his home state. And Louisa watches Maislin aggressively jab his thick finger directly into Senator Bishop's chest.
And Bishop just goes rigid and submissively nods.
And the cascading consequences of that nod are instantaneous. Shortly after, Bishop summons Louisa into his private office, aggressively interrogates her about her relationship with Pete Streeter, and then, before she can even formulate a defense, he fires her.
No severance, no transition. Her badge is confiscated on the spot.
It's psychologically devastating for Louisa, but sociologically it speaks volumes about the predatory hierarchy of Capitol Hill. Aides like Louisa are conditioned to be fiercely loyal to their politicians.
They guard secrets, script public personas.
Right, but that loyalty rarely flows downward. They're entirely disposable appendages. When Bishop is pressured by an apex predator like Maislin, he doesn't hesitate. He sacrifices Louisa instantly to protect himself.
It's like throwing ballast off a rapidly sinking hot air balloon. Bishop felt his altitude dropping, so he grabbed the heaviest sandbag Louisa's career and tossed it over to save himself.
And the profound insult is that Louisa discovers she has been immediately replaced by a new press secretary from New York.
With rumored romantic ties to Senator Stu Maislin, Bishop literally traded her livelihood to appease a rival.
Her entire worldview shatters. She was cast aside over a trivial association with her chaotic neighbor. But it doesn't crush her into submission. It ignites a deep, burning anger. She refuses to float away as discarded ballast.
And that demand for agency manifests physically. She storms back to her apartment, picks up a chipped plate, and violently hurls it against her kitchen wall.
The girl who used to carefully grind coffee beans is now smashing crockery.
Exactly. Then she marches upstairs, barges into Pete's apartment, and demands to know what kind of insane investigation he is running that cost her her career.
And Pete, seeing the fire in her eyes, sits her down, pours her a thick mug of his motor oil coffee, and reveals the surreal epicenter of this massive conspiracy.
And this is where the narrative takes a hard left turn into the deeply surreal. Pete looks at this woman whose life has been ruined, and he explains that the catalyst for every single one of these events is a pig.
A pig.
Not a missing file, not a briefcase of cash. A pig.
Specifically, a genetically altered, extremely low-fat, 200-pound pig bred at a specialized facility in Senator Maislin's home state.
I mean, I am trying to put myself in Louisa's shoes. I've been fired from the Senate, my car's destroyed, I'm drinking terrible coffee, and this guy is telling me my life was ruined over low-fat livestock.
The cognitive dissonance is staggering, but the details are meticulously documented. This pig was slated to be transported to Amsterdam as the centerpiece of a Goodwill Animal Husbandry Exchange program, sponsored by Maislin.
Okay.
It was even brought into the Hart Senate office building for a high-profile photo op. But shortly after, Maislin's office claimed the pig got sick. And then, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, right in the middle of Congress, this 200-pound animal vanished into thin air.
Which is a logistical impossibility. If you want to steal a 200-pound farm animal from a highly secure government building packed with Capitol Police and metal detectors, how do you do it?
You can't tuck a squealing pig under your overcoat.
Exactly. You need freight elevators, you need to bypass checkpoints, you need a vehicle at a loading dock.
And analyzing those mechanics is exactly what triggered Pete's investigation. He read about the missing pig as a tiny filler piece in the paper and recognized the logistical absurdity.
He knew it wasn't a random theft, it was a coordinated cover-up.
Right. He called Capitol security guards, but none of them would talk. So he placed that anonymous ad offering a cash reward, and almost immediately the robotic stop calls began. He touched a nerve.
So if you're listening right now, ask yourself, if you are a powerful, incredibly wealthy U.S. senator trying to run for president, why would you risk a career-ending scandal over a pig?
Why hire armed thugs to intimidate a civilian?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why blackmail a colleague into firing their press secretary? What is so valuable about a low-fat swine that you would commit serious felonies?
That is the ultimate question. And what makes the next phase so compelling is the profound lack of institutional support. Pete and Louisa don't have badges or warrants.
The DC police are not going to dedicate detectives to investigate a missing farm animal based on a Hollywood writer's hunch.
No, so they are forced to launch their own dangerously amateur, highly unorthodox guerrilla investigation.
And this is when they take the offensive. You have this incredible pairing. Pete relying on his South American combat instincts, and Louisa running on a newly discovered well of righteous anger.
Their first unorthodox tactic is infiltrating Senator Maislin's heavily guarded mansion in Potomac, Maryland.
The car ride there is amazing. Louisa is terrified, shaking, insisting that her Chevy Chase DNA simply does not allow for breaking and entering.
She is clinging to her rule-following identity. But Pete is completely unfazed. He rings the massive front doorbell, and when Maislin's teenage daughter, Amy, answers, he turns on the Hollywood charm.
He smoothly tells her he's a location scout for a new movie, and Amy, who watches MTV, actually recognizes him and is totally starstruck.
But then she stops and asks why the woman standing behind him, Louisa, is making these mega-gross gagging sounds.
Because Louisa's body is physically rejecting the lie. She is mortified.
And Pete, without missing a beat, solemnly explains that Louisa is his pregnant wife suffering from terrible morning sickness.
It's hilarious, but it gets them inside the perimeter. Pete scouts the kitchen and backyard for any sign of a hidden pig or bags of pig chow.
They don't find anything, but the psychological threshold is crossed. They establish they are willing to step outside societal norms. They are shedding their boundaries.
But the stakes go from mildly uncomfortable to absolutely lethal when they decide to execute a nighttime raid in rural Pennsylvania.
Yes, Pete deduces they need to find the guy who delivered the pig to the Capitol, a security guard at the Pennsylvania pig farm named Bucky Danowski.
And this raid goes disastrously wrong. It exposes why amateur sleuthing is a terrible idea.
They drive hours to Bucky's isolated house in the dark. They sneak through the tall grass, peek through a grimy window, and see Bucky sitting in a recliner.
And crucially, Bucky is sporting a heavily taped, newly broken nose.
An injury Pete recognizes because Pete broke it with his elbow during their naked tumble down the stairs.
Confirmation, they have the right guy. The conspiracy is verified.
But then, the amateur reality sets in. As Louisa steps backward to retreat, she accidentally kicks an empty beer can on the gravel driveway.
The ultimate cinematic mistake. You can just hear the clatter.
And that single metallic noise alerts Bucky. He lunges out of his chair. Before they can run, a massive, snarling black German shepherd hurls itself against the window glass.
Fight, flight, or freeze. They choose flight.
They sprint blindly across the pitch-black neighboring lawn. And as they're running, the night is shattered by shotgun blasts. Bucky's on his porch, actively firing a pump-action shotgun at them in the dark.
It's terrifying, and it gets worse. The homeowner next door wakes up, throws open his door, and inadvertently lets out his own guard dog, a massive Rottweiler.
So now Pete and Louisa are cowering in a dark patch of birch trees, struggling to breathe, while a German shepherd and a Rottweiler viciously attack each other on the lawn, and two different men are pumping shotguns.
The contrast in their survival backgrounds is stark here. Pete is in his element. He is terrifyingly calm. A security guard with a shotgun is a warm-up for him. He fluidly grabs Louisa, drags her to the Porsche, shoves her in, and peels out.
Completely dialed in. Meanwhile, Louisa is experiencing profound systemic trauma. For someone who believed following rules guarantees safety, realizing a snapped twig can turn you into target practice is a massive shock.
But this is where human biology is fascinating. As they speed back to DC, she isn't crippled by fear. The fear transmutes into exhilaration.
Her brain is flooded with a cocktail of adrenaline, cortisol, and dopamine.
She looks at Pete driving, and she starts romanticizing his chaotic past. She suddenly realizes her entire life has been suffocatingly dull. She literally has a manic thought about joining the CIA or the Peace Corps.
She is shedding her good girl persona in real time. When you step drastically outside societal norms and survive, it forces a psychological break. She tastes raw chaos and actually craves it.
However, the physical snooping was a catastrophic failure. They didn't find the pig, they lured the conspiracy, and they almost got murdered.
They realize sheer adrenaline isn't a substitute for strategy. They can't play amateur hour anymore. They need highly specialized help, which means crossing a massive legal boundary and committing federal crimes.
Enter the wiretapper, the most bizarre wild card in the story. Kurt Newfarmer.
Kurt is a deeply disturbing character. An ex-military communications genius operating on the fringes of the intelligence community. A mercenary of information.
Pete takes Louisa deep into the Adams Morgan neighborhood to meet him. And the sensory details of this place are vital. They walk into a dilapidated building smelling of old urine.
When Kurt answers the door, he's casually holding a .45 caliber Smith & Wesson. He's wearing a grimy ball cap, filthy thermal underwear, and looks like a down-and-out ferret.
And his apartment is a squalid mess of fast food wrappers and towering stacks of highly sophisticated surveillance servers. And right in the center, a massive, ripped-open cardboard box filled with 24 bulk crates of ribbed condoms.
Total sensory and moral overload for Louisa. This guy casually monitors illegal phone sex line taps for background entertainment, but he is shockingly effective.
Within hours, he places an illegal wiretap on Bucky Danowski's phone line in Pennsylvania, and he plays them a recording between Bucky and Senator Maislin.
The smoking gun. On the tape, Maislin asks, "You still have the stuff?" Bucky confirms. And Maislin says, "We'll try again, and this time pick out a healthy pig."
So they have proof the conspiracy is active and a second attempt is coming, but they don't know when or where.
Which is why Kurt suggests a strategy that pushes the psychological boundaries past the breaking point. He provides Louisa with a $700 flat-pack transmitter, a bug the size of a matchbook.
Voice-activated, with a flat battery pack she has to physically tape directly to the skin of her stomach.
And the plan is insane. Louisa has to walk back into the lion's den, secure a private meeting with Senator Maislin, and physically plant this bug on his person.
Let's pause and look at what they are doing. Our heroes are employing a legally ambiguous mercenary to plant a federal-grade listening device on a sitting U.S. senator. They are actively committing serious felonies.
It highlights the reality of asymmetrical warfare. When the system is corrupted by the people in power, conventional avenues are closed. Pete justifies it with his combat zone mentality. Maislin is above the law, so they have to operate outside it.
The ends justify the means. But for Louisa, it's the ultimate test of her assertiveness. The sting operation itself is a masterpiece of tension.
She calls Maislin's office, bluffs her way into a meeting, and tells him she's desperate for a job. She heavily implies she's willing to be a corrupt team player who will keep her mouth shut.
And Maislin, whose ego is his blind spot, totally buys it. He assumes she's an easily manipulated pawn and agrees to hire her.
But getting hired is the easy part. Planting the bug is the psychological hurdle. She's sitting in his waiting room, wearing the wire tape to her stomach, and she starts having a full-blown panic attack.
She realizes she doesn't have James Bond feet, she has Chicken Little feet. Her body is locking up.
And then Maislin storms out of an inner office, furious and sweating from a committee hearing. Louisa tries to execute a clumsy, diversionary stumble to drop the bug into his suit pocket.
But her hands are slip with sweat. The maneuver fails catastrophically. The bug misses the pocket and clatters loudly onto the hard floor.
A heart-stopping moment. But Maislin is too consumed by rage to notice. Instead, he turns his aggression entirely onto Louisa. He grabs her arm, deliberately and inappropriately brushes against her chest, and sexually harasses her, suggesting they go to his private office for some privacy.
And this is the exact moment Louisa's metamorphosis is completed. The paralyzing terror completely vanishes, incinerated, and replaced by pure, assertive rage.
She doesn't cower. She looks this powerful, predatory senator dead in the eye and tells him to eat dirt and die.
She explicitly threatens to cause him intense physical pain if he ever touches her again. She channels all her anger over her fired career and her smashed car and glares him down with such ferocity that Maislin actually steps back and retreats.
It is a triumphant moment of empowerment. The woman afraid of a parking dispute just intimidated a corrupt senator. And utilizing the adrenaline of that victory, she calmly walks into his private office under the pretext of delivering his mail.
And with steady hands, she smoothly drops the listening device deep into his suit jacket pocket. Mission accomplished.
And that illegal wiretap bears fruit almost immediately. It finally answers the multi-million-dollar question, why the pig?
The breakthrough comes from Louisa intercepting an envelope while sorting his mail. It's a check from a major insurance adjuster, made out to Maislin personally for nearly $500,000.
She poses as someone getting up to speed on the files, calls the adjuster, and extracts the details. Exactly 5 days before the pig was brought to the Hart Building, Maislin filed a police report claiming his home was aggressively burglarized.
He submitted a massive claim for the loss of highly insured items: diamond earrings, a stunning diamond choker, rare rings, and extremely valuable stamps.
And Pete instantly connects the dots. The burglary was completely faked. Maislin needed liquid cash. He ordered Bucky to steal the jewels from his own home.
The strategy was a two-pronged financial windfall. collect the $500,000 insurance payout, and simultaneously retain possession of the jewels to quietly fence them on the international black market for a massive secondary profit.
But the bottleneck is smuggling. How do you smuggle $500,000 in diamonds out of the U.S. without triggering customs or leaving a paper trail?
You use a biological smuggling route, diplomatic immunity, and animal biology.
You literally feed the diamonds to the pig. Bucky packed the diamonds and stamps into a highly durable sealed container and forced the genetically altered pig to swallow it.
Because the pig was officially scheduled to fly to Amsterdam on a senator-sponsored goodwill flight, it completely bypasses all standard customs inspections. No x-rays, no luggage searches.
Once the pig arrived in Amsterdam, Maislin's international contact would simply wait for nature to take its course, as Pete summarizes, in one end, out the other.
The audacity is staggering. Imagine an international diamond fence standing in an Amsterdam slaughterhouse with a clipboard, just patiently waiting for a genetically modified American pig to organically pass $500,000 in diamonds.
It's grotesque, but brilliant. And it would have worked flawlessly if not for one biological variable. The pig's digestion. The pig got severely sick from the rigid container, became erratic, and vanished into the heart building, derailing the timeline.
And the wiretap reveals one final, darker motive. Why was Maislin so desperate for cash?
The audio surveillance confirms Maislin is battling a severe, crippling addiction to amphetamines. He is a speed addict.
Buying massive quantities of illicit drugs to maintain his schedule. It fuels his rage, his paranoia, and creates the massive cash flow deficit that forced the insurance fraud.
So the puzzle is complete. Kurt records a crystal-clear conversation where Maislin and Bucky discuss the flight details for the second pig and explicitly discuss the ongoing insurance fraud. They have the smoking gun.
Pete and Louisa anonymously hand the tapes over to national media and federal investigators. The trap snaps shut. Maislin's career is vaporized overnight, and he faces decades in prison. The external conflict is cleanly resolved.
The bad guy goes down. But in a narrative this complex, the resolution of the external conflict immediately triggers a massive internal reckoning for our heroes.
Absolutely. Louisa can never go back to being the woman who finds joy in grinding coffee beans. Having tasted the thrill of true assertiveness, she utterly rejects her past life as a compliant aide.
She makes the life-altering decision to apply to law school.
Yeah.
She wants to possess the power to enforce and interpret the rules, not just blindly follow them.
But this profoundly complicates her relationship with Pete. Pete realizes how intensely he bonded with her during this shared trauma. He sees her new strength, realizes he's in love with her, and in a burst of vulnerability, he abruptly proposes marriage.
But Louisa's reaction is entirely unexpected. She balks. She flat out turns him down.
And Pete, whose ego is bruised, gets a conveniently timed call from his studio. Without fighting for the relationship, he packs his bags, leaves her his keys and his Porsche, and flies back to Burbank to shoot his movie. He just vanishes.
We have to analyze her rejection, because it's incredibly revealing. Why say no to the man who helped liberate her?
Right.
Louisa spent 30 years wanting a safe, controlled life. Navigating shootouts cracked that worldview wide open. Her rejection isn't about a lack of love, it's a reflexive defense mechanism to maintain control.
She's terrified of losing her newly won independence before she can even explore it. Jumping from subservient to a senator to wife of a dominating Hollywood writer feels like trading one form of submission for another.
Exactly, which explains the frantic phase she enters after Pete leaves. Louisa descends into a state of manic, obsessive cleaning. She vacuums repeatedly. She scrubs bathroom grout with a tiny toothbrush.
And most tellingly, she literally plugs in an iron and meticulously irons her own underwear.
The ultimate psychological tell. It's textbook displacement. When a person's emotional world feels overwhelmingly out of control, they aggressively impose physical order on their environment.
The cleaning is a physical manifestation of her internal panic. She's trying to scrub away emotional attachments and prove she's self-sufficient.
But you eventually run out of things to clean. You can't scrub away fundamental human desires.
So eventually, the manic energy burns out. She breaks down, packs 2 small suitcases, bakes a basket of her signature chocolate chip cookies, and conquers her fear of flying to reunite with Pete in Santa Barbara. Let me ask you, did Louisa achieve true independence, or did she just swap her reliance on a powerful senator for a wealthy writer?
If we look closely at the timeline, she absolutely achieved true agency. Louisa didn't run to Pete immediately. She stayed in D.C., endured the silence, processed her conflicting desires, and successfully applied to law school.
She secured her own intellectual future first.
Exactly. When she steps onto that airplane, she's doing it on her own terms. She isn't seeking a savior. She's choosing to engage with an equal partner. She's choosing the unknown chaos out of desire, not desperation.
It's a beautiful contrast to where she started at that depressing Willard Hotel birthday dinner. Now she's embracing a messy, unpredictable life with a man who initiates passionate romantic encounters on the front lawn of his estate. She traded the hollow illusion of safety for the vibrant reality of passion.
And that transformation is what makes this narrative so compelling. It demonstrates how proximity to immense power inevitably corrupts, how quickly the thin veneer of civilization drops when survival is on the line, and how sometimes leaning into the chaos is the only way to forge your true path.
I want you, the listener, to look at your own life for a second. Are you playing it safe like Louisa in Chapter 1? Are you letting machines dictate your boundaries? Are you just grinding your coffee beans in silent frustration because you're too afraid to demand what you're actually worth?
Are you avoiding the friction you desperately need?
Exactly. Maybe you don't need a sledgehammer taken to your car, but maybe you need your own metaphorical missing pig to shatter your routine and wake you up.
Sometimes the most absurd disruption is the exact catalyst required to force us to honestly reevaluate what we actually want.
But before we officially close the book on this deep dive, I want to leave you with one highly unsettling logistical thought, something that wasn't fully resolved. We know Senator Maislin was caught trying to execute his plan with a second genetically modified pig. He went to jail.
But what actually happened to the first pig?
Exactly. The one that got sick wandered out of his office and vanished into the labyrinth of the Hart Senate office building, fully loaded with $500,000 in untraceable diamonds and rare stamps. The sources never definitively account for its recovery.
They really don't.
So the next time you happen to be walking around Washington, D.C., and you see a surprisingly wealthy, incredibly relaxed Capitol security guard happily eating a pork chop, you might want to ask a few pointed questions about where he got his sudden windfall.
That is a terrifyingly plausible theory. I suppose the ultimate lesson here is, if you happen to see a loose thread on a chief's sweater, maybe just leave it alone.
Okay.
Unless you're fully prepared for the entire sleeve to fall off.
Exactly. Embrace the chaos. Until next time.